With Valve officially removing Dust 2 from the active pool and putting in Anubis in the last 20 or so minutes, I decided to revisit Anubis and discuss some of the positives and negatives of this map and whether I see it being potentially competitively viable or not, and also briefly discussing Dust 2 being removed. But this is very much a discussion, guys. I'm very curious on what you have to say about this as well, so do comment in the section below. Let me know your thoughts, not just on Dust 2 being removed. Do you agree or disagree with that decision? Is there maybe another map you'd have preferred be removed instead? And additionally, what's your thoughts on Anubis as a map? Have you played it much? And if so, do you like it or do you dislike it? But let's put a caveat down right off the bat, though. One thing Valve has shown in the past is that it's very consistent with this basis of once it backs a map, and it clearly wants that map to be competitively viable, it will release consistent patches and tweaks until that map gets as good as it possibly could. Think of Vertigo in particular. Now, I've personally always seen the potential and enjoyed Vertigo as a map. I saw it as something fresh and invigorating and new. I can understand a lot of people disagree with that statement, and even people now dislike Vertigo considerably. But even those people, I think we can agree, if you take Vertigo now compared to where it was before, it has improved drastically. Same with Ancient. Even if you go back to maps like Overpass, Overpass in its initial state was very different to what we see today. On the A-Long side, there used to be this little room on the A-Bomb site as well. If you know, you know. You were around back then. So Valve has always been a company that will back a map and they will try and work on it accordingly. And I absolutely believe if they feel Anubis is the next project they want to undertake, they want to make it the next Vertigo and Ancient, then they will. First off, though, Dust 2 being out, I'm happy about. I think it was becoming stale. It was becoming quite dull to watch. Mirage somehow miraculously still maintains its life after so many missed shots. It's just tanking bullets left and right. And Dust 2 full on, you know, get down Mr. President in Mirage. So, with Dust 2 being out, I'm actually totally fine with. I think it run its course. And it's a classic Counter-Strike map, don't get me wrong. I'm sure it'll be back one day. Hopefully better than ever. Now, with all of that out the way, let's discuss what I personally think are Anubis' strengths and its weaknesses as it currently stands. So, one of my main issues with Anubis as a map, which is going to be demonstrated first off on this B-Long, B-Ruin side, but I don't actually have that many issues with this area of the map per se, is that it has quite a lot of clutter going on and quite a lot of unnecessary half walls and steps and little bits of verticality. Now, verticality by itself isn't necessarily a problem in Counter-Strike. Many great goated CS maps have had tons of verticality in them. Think of Nuke. Think of even Mirage had verticality from the apps to Palace to the mid-window underground area. Overpass has verticality. Inferno has verticality. So that in itself is not a problem. But when it feels like it's just kind of being crowbarred in there for the sake of it and doesn't really serve that much of a purpose, I start to have a bit less of an enjoyment of it. So this B-Ruin side, I'm not as much of a problem with this, but I do feel like a couple of these angles can be shaved off a little bit to make this more of a hotbed of contestation, because from a CT's perspective, obviously I'm on the T side right now, but it's very easy to just throw over a couple of flashes. I haven't practiced flashes or smokes, by the way, just to be very clear on this map. But when you're trying to get through on the CT side, I did time this, you are going to be there roughly the same time, if not a little bit quicker, from the CT's perspective to peek this angle. It's very easy for the T's to just throw a flash over and completely destroy the eye line of an AWPer trying to maybe get a pick. Now, yes, you can fall back into this kind of a position and maybe have a second player that's going to be backing you up, watching from the tight angle and get a crossfire in. But again, flashes, smokes are always going to be the CT's worst enemy in that kind of a prospect. I just don't necessarily see what the purpose or the point of all of this verticality is. Like, if you want to have a bit of a step up, I get that, but this high up, it's a nitpick, I know, but you'll understand why I'm kind of touching on that now, because that is going to be a reoccurring theme. So next up, let's talk about the B site itself. The B site, for the most part, I don't have that many issues with. There's a couple of fairly sweaty angles, obviously, that can be exploited. There is a lot of angles on this bomb site as well, but they're mainly covered from one another, like quite intelligently, from stuff like pillars, from obviously this massive statue thing in the middle of the site as well. I just don't really understand what the point of this is. Like, this half wall that barely covers you at all. Like, that's with me crouched down. Your head is still completely open. What's the point in this little platform and this half box, half wall thing? I'd actually much rather that they just built this into a full box, maybe a spammable box that you could take damage through, but a box all the same, and then maybe removed one of these other angles instead, because if you had a box up here, the CTs could use this as cover while also watching downstairs into the underpass area. Right now, as it stands, you are completely open to being swung from the left or the right, and this off angle is going to be super, super easy as well to just completely wreck you and devastate you with a well-placed flashbang. So this seems completely unnecessary and completely pointless. How you deal with that, you either get rid of the box. I mean, I suppose you could leave it up there, but it seems unnecessary. Whatever. This area of the map as well is a little bit strange to me. It feels like it was maybe just kind of tacked on as an afterthought. The connector side itself is I have no issue with because it goes back to the mid portion of the map and it also brings you back to the spawn. There's a couple of things that I think could make this more interesting as a prospect though. The first one is completely bypass this connector portion and just run this room all the way back to middle instead. And I'll get back onto middle in a moment because middle for me is the biggest head scratcher on this entire map. This area with the platform and the staircase feels kind of just strange because this is mainly going to be used as a retake or a save position and it feels unnecessary. Like, it just feels overly complex for the sake of it. You get multiple headshot angles from this area. You can also hide in deep and close, which I suppose is its initial intention, but I don't like it that much. I feel like you want to dumb this room down a little bit and make it a little bit safer, or at least a little bit cleaner. If you do want to run, instead of having this extra portion and you just want to run this straight back onto middle, I could get behind that a lot more. So middle itself is a real strange one. I have no issue with these areas, watching middle from these back portions or this box area. Obviously it gives you an interesting angle on the approach. You've got some boxes up close here as well. No issue with this either. What's the point in this though? Like, why do we have two separate entry points onto middle? This is so strange to me. It doesn't really make any sense. And you can't get through this doorway. There's no connector area to be found or had on this one. If they wanted to run up a ladder, for example, from this under canal area up, so you could maybe get some kind of play through a ladder player pushing through this middle portion, I'd understand it way more. But as it stands, there's just two entrance points onto mid, just for the sake of having two entrance points. And it's really, really strange. Additionally, what you'll notice is that almost every single entry point from the T's perspective going through onto sites is bottlenecked. It's super, super close angles. This is probably one of the widest angles that they have in the entire map to make moves. All of these areas are super closed off and easily repelled by one Molotov or one smoke. No issues. Meaning if the CTs are smart about their utility, they can stall for super, super long periods of time. Now, I get that on other maps this is the same way. I understand that. But there's way less room for maneuverability and to actually fight. Like, if you think of middle on Mirage, you can smoke off connector. Sure, you can smoke off the window. You can smoke off the short side. That's going to cost you 3 separate smokes. For you to lock off mid here, it's one smoke. And mid's just gone. Like, you can't push. And you might think, oh, what about this window? It's one way. You can't get up here from this window. You can't even boost players up on this. So, this is really, really grim. And for me, it's gonna... Unless things change, and unless I'm missing something very key, and this is why it is a discussion, because I don't know everything. I don't purport to know everything. It feels to me this is going to be a very slow map. It's either going to be very quick rushes, or it's going to be incredibly slow, and the CT's playing around smokes and locking it down. Plus, if they can land a smoke here, which I'm sure is going to be lineups for this, no issues at all, then you still have to bypass more bottlenecks, more problems of moving through here afterwards. So, like, you can have one CT line up a smoke and just block you off, and then if they think you're pushing, they just throw another smoke down. Like, good luck getting through this, guys. You have another bottleneck down onto the A site. You have another bottleneck onto B. Regardless, I think I've made my point clear. So if we go over on the other side of the T-spawn, we have these connector areas. No problems with any of this. We get down to this interesting canal area, which I honestly like. I think it's pretty cool. Again, maybe if you want to put a ladder up here, so it makes more sense to have 2 entry points on the mid. I suppose the easy way around that is you just make this wider and only just have 1 entry point. This is all cool, looks nice, it looks different. This window is not accessible for the CTs, by the way. This is mainly just for flashes and for smokes. We'll pretend I didn't do that. There we go, that's the one I was looking for. Very, very simple stuff. And then you have this area as well, which is like this overlook. It's called T-side upper. I'm not sure about this at all, to be honest. Now, I don't have an issue with it necessarily. It reminds me a little bit of Cobblestone when you'd go on the right side through mid and you'd get up there, even with the locked door as well. But when you consider how tight this angle is to entry onto, like, look how small this is. And again, going back to what I was saying earlier about mid, what I was saying about B, look how tight that is. And again, it's not just the fact of how tight that is. There's no real counterplay from the T's perspective here. And if you know there's not that much time left because you've stalled them off forever, it's going to be so easy for you to just smoke bang through there. And if they push into you, you're going to just be getting doubles and triples all over the shop. If they push in after that smoke, there's quite a few angles that you can lock down with. And again, there's another narrow area here, which you can easily smoke off. And additionally, I could see, honestly, on this map, that you probably play 1 person on A site, 1 person playing sort of second mid area from the CT's perspective. And you could easily put in, like, an AWPer that would throw smoke down, like, onto this area. There's going to be lineups for sure. Throw a smoke down there, and then just basically sit here with an AWP. And think of how hard this is going to be to hit this AWPer in terms of flashes. They're basically going to be able to use this pillar as cover for flashes through the windows, flashes through the top. I don't think there's going to be many easy ways of flashing over because this entire ceiling is going to block off the trajectory of those flashes. You could just sit like an AWPer here. Doesn't even need to be an AWPer, can just be an M4 player. And they can just lock this down so easily. And if things get bad for them, they can fall back as well, fairly straightforward, back onto here. They could play this angle as well. It's going to be difficult to get rid of them. Sure, you could maybe get a Molotov through these windows. So I feel like what I'm getting at here is there's a lot of very close claustrophobic bottleneck angles here for the T's to try and push through. And I'd like to see a couple of these extended a little bit. Another idea as well is you kind of saw this interesting staircase down here, which is locked off. I wouldn't be opposed to the idea of opening this doorway up and letting the T's push down on this side as well. Why not? Let them push 2 separate angles. It's still the same entry point, but at least get them to bypass this main side, this A main side, a bit easier. Give the A defenders a little bit more to think about when they're actually holding their angles. Instead of just being perched up here and watching or on the back of the site, now they actually have to watch 2 separate angles. That's going to make their life way more difficult. It's going to give the T's a better opportunity to try and explode through and get some success. Anyway, so I think a lot of these problems are quite easily fixed. The biggest one for me is middle right now. I don't really see the purpose or the point of it. The canals area, underground connector is really solid. I quite like both of the bomb sites, although I do have a couple of issues here and there. I think this is a competitively viable map, to be fair, but I think a fair bit of work is going to need to go into it in order for it to live up to its potential. What do you guys think? Do you agree or disagree? Comment in the section below, let me know your thoughts, and I'll see you in the next video, guys. Peace.